Good morning. This is the Innovation Conversation. How you doing, Tom?
I'm doing well, Kevin. Welcome back.
Thank you. Thank you. I had a great time.
I
I had
bet.
it was just it was like I think I sent you in a text earlier today. I'm still on island time.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Don't lose
Right.
that for a while.
I'm ready to put on my Pete's Pub hat.
Nice. Nice. Well, we should have a beer in front of us and
Oh man.
telling those stories.
Anyway, the story that I wanted to talk about that kind of popped up in the last week, which I thought was really interesting, was there was a report, I think originally in the information, but then it popped up in a bunch of different places, in which Apple apparently, and I don't think they've commented publicly about it yet, is suspending work on the next iteration of its Vision Pro headset. And the idea is that they're gonna refocus. Eventually, they're gonna try and come out with a less expensive one. The one that they've been out with is about $3,500. It is not sold the way I think not certainly not sold the way Apple expected it would. Um, I did a video about it back when it first came out because I did a demo,
Yeah.
and the tech. I mean, I was ready to buy one because it was $3,500, but the technology blew me away. And the idea that they're stepping back from this at this moment strikes me as interesting, um, because like every company, or every company should be anyway, they're in an innovation cycle. I don't think this means that they have failed. I just think means that they tried something that maybe didn't work as well as they would have expected. I mean, you deal with companies like this all the time. I
Mhm.
don't think this is the death knell for Apple.
No, I think that it's, I mean, I think you always want those bets to, pay off and continue to pay off and, be the beginning of a platform that's going to be enduring through time. And, it sounds like, they've recognized that, the sophistication of the hardware and the level of cost, has probably somewhat limited at least the broad consumer appeal um, that they had hoped for. And, perhaps, that next, kind of step change in consumer appeal, might require something different, right?
Yeah.
Might require something lighter, something less expensive. And I don't think that that is necessarily a failure. That maybe it's disappointing. But I think, a real key to being able to continually innovate is to, not stay totally wed, uh, long, not stay totally wed to something that hasn't worked. Now, there's a fine line there because you really do need to understand why it hasn't worked, right? And are there things you can do to just tweak it to work better, right? Because you don't want to bail for an investment too quickly. You want to make sure you've given it the right go, and they just must have felt that the evolving the current platform and device from where it is, requires that was going to be too much of a slog, relative to what they were going to get out of it. I will say, I had the opportunity, I'm not remembering their name now, but when I was at the Wall Street Journal conference, the future of everything, and one of the companies that was being highlighted in the lab was a company that uses the Vision Pro to help uh, doctors and operating room teams more effectively and efficiently set up for surgeries,
Hmm.
right? So making sure that all of the tools were in the perfect, were in the right. It was almost like a pit crew, for
Right.
NASCAR or Formula One. So you would literally drop yourself into the OR and you'd be able to see where this table sits, where that table sits, the way these instruments lie. And then the folks that were going to be participating in the surgery would actually have like the playbook
Right.
for the surgery because each surgeon does things slightly different.
Right.
And it's that variability that can cause inefficiency, right? Things taking longer, and also can cause variability in, the outcome of the surgery, maybe not being as reliable. So there's interesting implications in that, and you have this company and maybe other companies, right, fully kind of architecting their future, on this platform. So what is the implication for them? You'd think that they could transport that to, or transfer that to other devices,
Yeah.
and other form factors. But interesting to think of the implications when you potentially make an ecosystem change like that.
Yeah. I mean, listen, I mean, to me, and the lesson of this, in my view, to every business is that, yeah, this hasn't worked out the way they thought. But before there was an iPad, there was a Newton, right? Before there was the Alexa system, there was the Amazon smartphone.
Yep.
And there are two technologies that basically failed, but 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 provided a foundation on which the companies that did them could learn and then iterate some more in a way that was going to be more effective and I mean and more consumer friendly, if you will. You only find out what's consumer friendly to you to throw something out there to see if it works.
Absolutely. And, to not be afraid, again, there's a whole process of iteration towards success that you'd like to be on. But if you're finding that the iterations is not leading towards success and the signals you're getting back, are telling you that this direction is probably not going to pan out, it's a pretty good discipline to be able to stop that. And, really important that you you codify the learnings that you got from that, right? Take them away and have them, such that you can apply those, to the next innovations that you go pursue. And in that case, if you do that well, the experiment was totally worth it.
It's also interesting. I mean, and Apple is an interesting case to me in the sense that, and I'm a total Apple junkie, right? The but Apple does walk kind of an interesting line in terms of brand perception. Yes, it's a technology brand, but it's also a luxury brand, right? And so it has to, I think it has to be careful. And maybe the Vision Pro shows us that, if you go a little bit too much into the luxury brand side, you start to lose some of your footing. And that's a very narrow path to walk. And again, the larger lesson for every business is you got to know what your brand is,
Yeah.
you have to know it's totally worth it to push the envelope in terms of what your brand represents and what your equity is. But but you have to be really careful. The minute you kind of overstep, it's really important to pull back and say,
It
okay,
is.
we push the envelope just a touch too far.
Yeah, no, I agree. And you have to take those risks. And you have to define what is luxury and push the boundaries and bring your customers there. And, I think we're seeing, that not enough customers appreciated the value proposition of that luxury, right? It'd be one thing, if, the cost of that device or of any device, right? Um, it might not be so much of a cost issue. It may be kind of cost and function,
Yeah,
right? Like maybe just not that many people want to walk around with the headset on,
right,
or there's not enough use cases, for the headset to justify the luxury. Because part of luxury is showing off luxury, right?
right.
And in the feeling that you get from the pride you get, or whatever, for showing off that luxury. And the Vision Pro is a tough luxury to show off, you know, at any kind of scale for any
Yeah.
individual.
Scott Galloway, who I love his commentary.
Yeah.
He talked recently. He's been against this thing from the beginning, and his position was always people are only going to want to wear things that make them more attractive to people with whom they want to mate.
No doubt. Yeah, I've heard him
The
say
Vision
that. Yeah,
Pro is a really good way to communicate with people. I'm going to be home alone on Saturday night,
totally. Yeah,
and
exactly.
I totally get that.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, nothing about wearing that I would think would draw one to another. But unless you're both wearing it, I guess. But
You know,
yeah.
in another place, this would have been a technology that would have been displayed at a World's Fair, right? And people would have gone into a room and, 50 at a time, put these things
Mhm.
on, had different immersive experiences, walked out, and they would have been blown away. But
Mhm.
those things don't exist anymore.
Yeah,
The World's Fair is on our laptops
it
every day.
is. Yeah.
And so it's harder to have those kind of like breakthrough experiences in that sense. It's I also think it's interesting. I mean, I think this is a kind of thing that Amazon is going to be dealing with now too. I mean, they're clearly talking about the ways in which they want to change their Alexa systems. And I recognize that as I say that word, I have devices in my office, your
I know.
office. Now the offices of people all over America are going off. Well, that the A system.
The A
Um,
system.
but they're going to have to figure out, it seems to me, because I think in a lot of ways, the A system, they have not innovated enough about over the past, in the years since they initially released it. And they're going to have to walk that path. I think they desperately need to innovate around it. And by the way, I
Mhm.
think Apple needs to innovate around Siri. Certainly AI is going to be a big part of that. Um, but I think those two products, it seems to me, Siri and the A system, are examples of how companies have not innovated fast enough, have not tried enough new things with enough consistency.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, it wasn't that long ago that, I think it was like every Friday or every other Friday, you would get an email from Amazon talking about all the like the new skills that have been added that you can add to your life, right? To get further utility out of it. Um, and that was and those were lots of times were capabilities built by Amazon, but in many cases they had the A platform
Right.
available for developers, right, to develop things on. And so you had a pretty good ecosystem of folks in there building things that were leveraging that tech. And you really saw that happening on the consumer side. You saw that happening on the industrial and the business commercial side. A lot of innovation there. And it does feel like maybe kind of like during COVID sometime, that kind of trickled off a little bit, and you heard less of it. And I mean, there is an underlying architecture, to that they've been building on top of, and increasing the capability of. And they brought that from kind of entertainment and interactive to doing more things kind of functionally, right, like ordering from wherever, linking to whatever other food delivery app or whatever, right? So all those capabilities, and then a lot of interacting or integration of that with home automation, start turning lights on and off, music on and off,
Mhm.
operating cameras, those kinds of things, right? So there were these pretty nice changes along there. But it ultimately comes down to kind of your fundamental intelligence layers and models underneath it that, there is a time to make a step change, to a new architecture, and new underlying models. And, I think given the advances we've seen in AI, in the last, few years, not surprising that they want to make a step change, off to something else. And I think uh, it'll be interesting how they introduce this to their customer base and then bring them along, from the existing A platform, into new levels. And I know they're talking about like having a premium version, and a base version, and it'll be interesting to see how they manage that. But I give them credit, for not staying wed to the old.
Yeah.
But it
Oh,
is going to be important not to lose their customer base in going from the old to the new.
I agree with you. If anything, I would argue that they've stayed wedded to the old for too
Too
long.
long. Yeah.
That they have not, that they and everybody, and there's always comments in the media about people saying, well, the no, the Alexa system's a money losing system, and and they clear, and Amazon, I think, actually took money out of their devices division, and laid off a bunch of people.
It did.
But in a lot of ways, I think that the argument could be made that the problem was they didn't invest enough in terms of continually innovating, and again, making sure that you and I, both of whom have those systems sitting in our homes and our desks, we're finding new ways to make it to use it. I mean,
Yeah.
if Amazon's goal is to be inextricably intertwined with every part of our lives possible, it's like they forgot that when it came to systems like the A system,
Yeah.
because it became less intertwined, not more so.
Well, they may have run into a limitation as far as the amount of horsepower and intelligence and compute capability, that
Right,
that they've been able to build in that. And then ultimately, the level of kind of task automation, that could come out of that.
right,
They may have pushed the boundaries of where that tech could go. Um, and it is this step change into the kind of the AI world, and like super task automation,
yeah,
that they're going to look to yield,
yeah.
from that.
But and again, just to go back to, our core audience here, it seems to me the lesson has to be, to continually innovate in the store experience. Something that I fear with all the consolidation that's taking place out
Mhm.
there, and the way the industry is sort of reshaping itself at the moment, I worry that the kind of innovation that they need to do is going to be backburnered as people look for efficiencies as opposed to new ways to being effective. And I think and if you're a small retailer, who's not consolidating, man, you ought to be out there looking at every department every day saying, how do we make this better? How do we innovate? How do we reduce friction? How do we do something the other people cannot do or will not do?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, you have to have that. It's not always about implementing big technologies and whatnot, although, the bigger retailers that have better balance sheets, they're going to they're going to be able to do more of that easily. But it is all about creating that innovation culture and, really, instilling that in your culture, though. It's not like you walking around as a manager and saying, what can we do better here? What can we do better there? It is instilling in your team that serving your customers, right, to constantly know that you can be doing better than you are and challenging yourself to say, how do we do this? How do we do this better?
Right.
And that's, conversations with your customers, it's conversations with your vendors and or partners, it's conversations with your teammates, and then building that rigor, into your business process, right? Building that into if you're running a department,
Yeah.
right? It's, every week, or maybe that's too frequently, but maybe every month, right? You have a forum where, you look for new ideas from folks, and, you have some portion, of their performance evaluation that, measures how effectively they have been at identifying, and introducing opportunities, and then, how willing they are to embrace, opportunities brought from others, because it does take both skill sets, and it's really just it's a mindset, and it's something you can build into your structure. You can build into your, performance systems, and, I think if you don't do that, you're really leaving a lot to chance.
Well, one place they can start is they have their people listen to the innovation conversation every other week.
Yeah, we have all the answers.
And then listen to that and say, okay, what did they talk about that we can apply to our business? Not just on a
Yeah.
macro level, but on a micro level. So,
Well,
yeah,
you know what? That's also a challenge to us to make sure we deliver.
absolutely. Hey,
All right.
listen, great to see you. I'm glad to be back, and I'll see you in a couple of weeks.
Sounds great, Kevin.
Take
Thanks,
care. See
everyone.
ya.